I'm not really sure what the headline is really. Minister signs off an order for goods. Well, that's usually how it works. And the fact that he's not aware of who signed off just seems like the usual politician. You know, rhetoric that we get really. It's trying to avoid kind of scrutiny, particularly if it's at a, Labour Party conference. It's trying to avoid in the moment scrutiny. But it's no surprise he would have signed off on it. He would have said that. And even the cuts, I said a few episodes ago that more cuts were coming, and really, what do we expect? Because we heard this was in the pipeline. And it's a shambles. I mean, I find myself repeating myself episode after episode, same things really, but, essentially, access to work needs to be just redesigned and rethought about. And, it needs to lead to access to work, which is something it doesn't need to at the moment. There's value to work, if anything, healthcare, and it seems to be done that way. It must be all the work seems to be. Well, I've said it many times before, in my opinion, just my opinion, that it's a lot of these schemes or reforms that were brought in, particularly in the Brown years, particularly in relation to disability, he didn't get the reputation of Teflon Tony for no reason, and I felt like a lot of these legislations were kind of Teflon, particularly. And with experience, work life and his work, a lot more around disability policy and stuff. It just felt like a lot of legislation was Teflon. It's like he gave the appearance of rights for disabled people, but in reality, when you first joined the service and tried to access these rights, they were just barriers all over the place, and that was whether it was work, whether it was social care, whether it was housing. The actual legislation sounds all shiny and bright about you when you pull back a couple of hairs. There's no real meat and bones to it, which is actually it's played out what we've seen. We've seen it with the DDA. I know that was brought in. That wasn't brought in under a Labour government, and access to work probably wasn't. But a lot of the add-ons and additions that have happened to those legislations did happen under a Labour government, and then of course the Tories came in first for the coalition, and then they've been their own rights, and they carried on kind of the work of dismantling very much a lot of their legislation that Thatcher and Major brought in the late 80s, early 90s, which, that's sort of promote them, because, as I've said before previously, a lot of these messages were brought in at a time, and yes, there was pressure, there was undoubted pressure from disabled campaigners, extension and so forth, but the timing of those coincided with the need for cuts in certain areas, and how those legislations, term security care, coincided, as many of us already know, with the need to reduce costs. So yes, it was about rights, but also it was about kind of redesigning services in a more cost-effective way, and the two went hand in hand in terms of the way the government designed them. And there's no doubt that a lot of these legislations that have been brought in don't do what they say on the tin, and as we just said, a lot of the rights that it's signed to give disabled people haven't been realised in full, in some cases at all. And, the ideas around the legislation don't fit what they actually are, and what the legislation actually delivers. But, access to work is a big one, really, because especially in the culture ruling at the moment in terms of the the ableist rhetoric around benefit goods and welfare reforms. It's like I've said, just feels like a disabled person being gaslit every single day because you have the strange rhetoric that's been around for 15, 16 years. Around for that, but it's been louder than that's 15, 16 years. And now you've got access to work, which is increasingly getting more draconian and harder to get. And they say, well, they want you to work, but they don't want you to work because even if you do find a job, it's very hard to keep that job, not because you're, any proven ability or inability to do the job. It's simply because mechanisms that allow you to access that job, or the access to work, don't work for you. And you look at housing, the same thing. You look at transport, the same thing. The same barriers are there. And, keep being told that, we're not active members of the society, but, can't get accessible housing, social care goods. We can't get the support to actually live independently at home. We can't get the support to actually get a job in the job. Try and get benefits. He told you, paid on society. You can't actually get anywhere into society because the constraints on transport, etc. and so forth. So it's just feel like being constantly gaslit, and then the item on the cake is this entire because once they've totally eroded of any self-worth, of any value, of any self-esteem, question self-esteem, well, yeah, quite brilliant, isn't it? This is you feel like you're an end-all, yes, obviously, I shouldn't have said that bit because I'm being a bit flippant, and it's not flippant legislation, but get where I'm coming from. It just feels like it's a dystopian nightmare for disabled people at the moment, and we really need to fight against it and rebuild the movement, which is going to be easy, but we need to provide our own answers. I know we shouldn't have to, but like I've said in previous episodes, no one's coming to save us. And, no political party out there is interested in disabled people. I'm sorry, I don't believe they are. And, everyone's crying out for socialism. So then it's not the answer for disabled people. I don't think so either. I think you've seen in the past any political party that seems to sympathise with disabled people only seems to do it as a kind of use us as a kind of a stick to beat the opposition with to win the argument. They don't really have any real vested interest in disabled people and build a lot for us, because we yet to see, I need to see any awareness of completely blind to anything. Any of the major parties come out with a manifesto for disabled people that addresses, well, I say any, but the very best, very little of the holistic needs that we have. Because, you can talk about social care, you talk about benefits, but, we, just like everybody else, to abandon individuals, and we need a holistic approach. So I think it was only the last episode I talked about where, a report from which talked about disabled drivers being left out of green and technology. That's a perfect example of, in terms of climate change, disabled people on, and not even on the radar in terms of that. And it's like we're not seeing as holistic 3D, all-round individuals, and we have all those needs. And so our needs are just about, okay, we've got core needs, which are healthcare and social care, but we've got all the aspirations in whether it's education, whether it's, housing, whether it's employment, whether it's, marriage, etc. and so forth, leisure activities, etc. and so forth, ambitions to build businesses and whatever that might be, or creative industries and representation there, and bring creative vision to life, etc. and so forth, all of that. So it's a holistic view, and I'm here to see a political party that addresses any of those needs for disabled people at all in the last 15 years, other than address piecemeal token offerings to obey, issues around courts, really. So, no one's coming to save us, as I've said many times before. Bad, but it's true.